the portion that we're going to look at today is actually very short. It's going to be the first four trumpets, but to get into the other ones is so long. So I thought, I'd rather be short today so we can have a chance to do the other subject a little justice. I don't know if we'll have to split that one into two sessions or not. So don't be surprised if it's a little short. But I do have a review. I was trying to get this set up this last Thursday, and it turned out that I was trying to do it on the fly a little bit. Actually, last Sunday, saw my son-in-law, who deals with PowerPoints an awful lot, and gave me some hints and some suggestions. So I'm hoping that this review, prepared the way it is, will help us to visualize a little bit better of what we're looking at. And so we have these three sections, of course, of the book of the Revelation: the things which thou hast seen, that's chapter 1, right? Okay. The things which are, and that's chapters 2 and 3. And then the things which shall be hereafter, and that's chapter 4 from there on out. So we've got these three sections, and so we look at them, and there it goes. Okay. So the things which thou hast seen, that's the vision of Christ. And so they get a very good, clear vision and picture of what Christ was all about. And then it's very short, one topic that goes on in chapter 1. That brings us to the things which are. Now, the things which are the 7 churches of the Revelation, 7 churches of Asia, and each one represents let me see. Let me shut this for myself. Okay. And each church represents a different age of history. And so we have from 33 to 100, Ephesus, who lost their first love. They lost their first love. And that's, remember, the big thing about that was characteristic of it was that they, it's like you're with the apostles, the apostles are with Jesus Christ, and how could they lose their first love? How can this happen? And when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with students of theology and people arguing back and forth, it is no wonder how people can really, within not just a generation, but within a couple of years, they can end up going off on something. And it's not always that they're going off, that they're doing bad doctrine. It's just other interpretations sometimes. And sometimes it leads to bad doctrine. Sometimes it leads to different organization. But nonetheless, you're baffled by how could they get this? Like, for instance, one of the things that we see is that there has been throughout history strong teaching about the return of Christ and the changes that would take place. But especially in our modern times, the issue has come out about, well, how do you interpret the Revelation? And the conclusion was you interpret it as something that is in the future that has yet to be done, the futurist interpretation and understanding. But you have those who are preterists. Preterist meaning the past. It's the word for the past tense is the preterite. And so they look at it and say, see the book of the Revelation having been fulfilled around 70 AD. And you look at the Revelation, you think nothing that's described here ever happened back in 70 AD. I mean, it is so remotely different that it's hard to understand. Well, this is what happens because somebody wanted to take the book of the Revelation and they couldn't understand it, so they decided to interpret it allegorically. In other words, just symbolically, and what we could apply it to make spiritual lessons out of it, and they didn't want to take it literally. They couldn't imagine it being literal. So the next thing you know, they just interpret it allegorically. Well, since it's interpreted allegorically, that means there's no future. So they naturally drift off into the past. And so that's the kind of the reason it's used there. It's not that it's really bad doctrine. It's just not useful doctrine, and it's incorrect doctrine. Okay, and you've got some definitely born again evangelistic people. They think it's preterite. I think they're wrong, and they are. And they'll figure it out when Jesus comes back. Okay, when they have the rapture, then they'll say, "Oh wow, okay, that's a happy thing to be wrong about." I'd say, to be surprised by the rapture. Okay, so that's 33 to 100 AD. Then comes next the church of, who knows? Smyrna, the suffering church. There were 10 persecutions at that time that they went through. And so the word Smyrna means suffering. 100 to 313 AD. What happened in 313 AD? That is when Constantine brought the Edict of Milan, where he ended the persecutions and made Christianity a legal religion. Then comes the Church of Pergamus. Pergamus is the compromised church. The thing that is most characteristic about the Church of Pergamus is the seat of Satan, and that's the seat of Satan is referring to the head of the Babylonian mystery religions. We're going to see that become a prime player when we get up to chapters 17 and 18. Okay, Mystery Babylon. Well, the seat of Satan was the head of Mystery Babylon in Pergamus, and it was at that point that in 314, with the Edict of Milan, where now the Roman pagan system becomes united in a way with the Christian system, with the state church. It goes up to 607 AD. And why 607? Okay, that is because it was at that point that one of the popes, Gregory the Great, who was able to persuade that the Bishop of Rome was bishop over the church, a church universal. And so that's when you had true Roman Catholicism come in, claiming to be the one universal church with the Bishop of Rome at its head. And so that was the compromised, that was when the compromise took place, which led, now it says here 590 and 607, there's an overlap here on account of it's connected to the ministry of Gregory the Great. And that brought in Thyatira, the tolerant church, and that's where many of the elements of the pagan elements became pervasive in the church at large, the world church at large. And so you'll see many of those elements come down to this day, and they were tolerated. So now you have the mystery religion, which started with the seat of Satan, okay, and it was incorporated in Thyatira. Okay, now that takes us up to 1517 AD, and why 1517? Because that's essentially the start of the Protestant Reformation. Okay, from 1517 to about 1700. Now we say 1517 because that was the start of the Protestant Reformation, and of course you had the dead church, meaning that they really weren't up to speed with their missionary or evangelistic activity. They had a great correction to theology and to understanding soteriology, the doctrine of salvation, but then they sort of didn't go anywhere. Now, 1700 AD, we say 1700, could be like 1720, 1740. They mark it and connect it with the Great Awakening here in America in the early 1700s. And there was a second Great Awakening that came after that, and that would be running up from 1700 to the 1900s. When I tried to pin down a date that all the Bible expositors like to point to, somebody said 1910. I thought, well, why 1910? Okay, maybe that's because of the start of World War I, or near the start of World War I should say. I never got an answer. So I'm going to say 1900s, and we don't really quite know what that was like. It was a time of great revival. And we saw that up through the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. Things seem to take a little bit of a turn with the late 1900s with the Church of Laodicea, the lukewarm church. In fact, you know what I should do? I'm hoping that you're seeing on the side here how the time periods have elapsed also. But what comes next? Well, watch carefully. Oh, there it goes. Okay, we're out of here. The rapture takes place. Okay. Okay, so this is how you want to get perspective on this. Okay, so we have the things which thou hast seen, the things which are, then comes the things which shall be hereafter. And I'm not going to go through the whole chart here because we're only part of the way through. Okay, no, I'll tell you, for today, I'll go through the whole thing, but after this, when we use this for review, and I'll go through the review more quickly the next times around. Well, I'll go through the whole thing right now. Basically, you've got, okay, the rapture and the throne room, chapters 4 and 5. And this makes sense. You want to kick everything off, from headquarters. Okay, so you have the rapture and the throne room, chapters 4 and 5. And then you'll notice this is at the beginning of the rapture. Okay, next comes the 7 seals being broken. 6 seals are broken at first during this portion. You have in chapter 6, seals 1 to 4, which set forth the agenda of the Antichrist, the presentation of the Antichrist. What you want to remember about this, the detail that's important to remember, is that he is not fully empowered by Satan. At this point, he is, at the very least, a political leader, just coming up with what seems like an answer for the world problems. Okay, now, to what extent he's involved with Satan? Well, he's going to definitely be somehow involved with Satan, but not like he will be later on, halfway through the tribulation. And he'll be establishing a covenant with Israel that will seem to answer the questions for a while. Then chapter 7 comes an interlude. Now remember, the interludes are important for our understanding of the structure of the Revelation because it's not a piece of chronology. It's something that's happening during this time period. And you'll notice that all of this is covering the first 3.5 years. Okay. But here you have descriptions of the various actors that are involved in the Revelation. At this point, it is the great multitude and the 144,000. And then this section ends with the 7th seal, which brings about, guess what? The 7 trumpets. Okay, so the 7th seal inaugurates the 7 trumpet judgments. This occurs, now you'll notice I have it here that it occurs at the 3.5-year mark. That doesn't mean that 7 trumpets happen bam, 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 bam in that 3.5 years, but it's like so tightly, they're so tightly together that it's about the 3.5-year mark. Okay. During this time, you get the 6 trumpets. Now, that's going to be chapter 9, and this is what we're not going to cover. We cover a little bit of this. We're into the trumpets today. We're into the first 4 trumpets. That's what we're going to look at today. But trumpets 5 and 6 come with woes. Now, I'll let you know right now that the woes mean that there is going to be great demonic activity. Before these woes, it's terrible. There's stuff happening in the atmosphere and on the earth, but the woes have specific demonic or angelic activity that is accompanying them, and that seems to be what makes them be woes. Okay, then we get to interlude number 2, and that's going to be coming up. We haven't done that yet, and that's where we see the ministry of the 2 witnesses. Okay, they get killed and then resurrected. And then comes the 7th trumpet with woe. An interlude where we see the new actors that are involved here, the woman, which is Israel, the dragon and the beast, that includes the false prophet and the Antichrist. We're going to see in chapter 14, 3 evangelistic efforts. And then chapter 15 is the prelude to the final portion of God's judgment. So this happens all at about the 3.5-year mark. And I'll say when we look at interlude number 3, that's when we're going to see that the Antichrist becomes empowered with Satan, and then you have the false prophet, you have the beast, you have the kingdoms, everything. And this is where the Antichrist becomes worshipped. It's at that point, now that he's filled with Satan, he becomes worshipped along with the false image, and that's when you have the one world religious system, that's where you had the 666 with the mark of the beast, not being able to buy or sell, having the one world economic system and the one world government. That's when all that takes place. So the first 3.5 years, it's bad, but the real culmination of it is halfway through. Okay, so that's at the 3.5 year mark. Then comes the 7 vials. When the 7th trumpet sounds, begins the 7 vials. And the 7 vials are associated with the outpouring of God's wrath from him directly. From him directly. And then you see Mystery Babylon is put down. Okay, and it's described in the 4th interlude. Now you'll notice that it goes from 3.5 to 6.9. Okay, 6.9. Why don't we say 7? The reason for that is because when you look at the prophetic understanding of things, in prophecy they mark years as 360 days. Okay, and you say, stupid ancients. Well, not so stupid. Okay, now there's some things that can be said about that, but is this just the Jews were like that? No. Why do we have 360 degrees in a circle? Why don't we have 365? It's not round. It's not divisible. No. I don't know. Except for this was an understanding of the ancient world, and what they would do is they would put in, I think it's called an intercalary, in other words, intercalendarish kind of piece of time to add on, kind of like leap year. Okay, and they would make adjustments over time. Okay, so when you look at the fact that, in fact, it's even said in the Revelation that about unless if the time was cut short, they have other kinds of suffering. So if you calculate 360 years times 7, you come out to 6.9. At 6.9 years, we have the second coming. Okay, and that's where you get Armageddon, the millennium, the great white throne judgment, the new heaven and the new earth. Now, I could have broken that down a little bit further, but it doesn't fit well on my PowerPoint slides, so I put them all in with the inauguration of the second coming. The inauguration of the second coming. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a little bit of an outline. But by the way, if you can get these things sort of locked in with your understanding of the book of the Revelation by the time we're done, you're doing good. You're doing good. Because remember, there are things like I was asked recently about, well, you have the an hour that's mentioned in the book of the Revelation. I said, well, yeah, I guess it's about the same thing as the half hour. Okay, in other words, I don't know, I don't know the significance of it, and I can't find any reading on it that helps out in any way. We're just going to go with the effect of those kind of things. But the mistake that was being made was to try to say, well, if a year is 360 days long and you have 1,280 days for this, and you have let me see, well, so an hour is what percentage of a day? So that means a percentage of a year. So that means that maybe it was this length of, don't go over the calculation. It's not worth it. They did do that. This is how the Seventh-day Adventists got into trouble, because they looked at these days and they got it figured out. These days represent years, and so from a certain point in time, if you measure, you come up with, I think, 1848 for the return of the Lord. But they were wrong. Okay, Jehovah's Witnesses did the same thing. They got it wrong one time and then another. They kept getting it wrong. Then they finally gave up. And I don't know what anybody, Joe, do you know what the final stand is on the return of Christ as far as? Okay. The Seventh-day Adventists, what they did was they said that Christ did indeed come back, and he entered into an investigative judgment in heaven, purging the temple, the heavenly temple, to make it ready for us. I don't know why the temple in heaven would have to be purged, okay, but that's what they said. They got a vision and it worked for them. Okay, and the Jehovah's Witnesses did something similar with an investigative judgment. Came back spiritually. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and say that again into the microphone for people at home.
Yeah, they said that Christ came back in 1914 spiritually, but that goes against the book of Acts, where it said Jesus would come back the same way that he left.
Yes.
Visibly.
Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses will not admit to it, but they really got a lot of their stuff from the Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, it's very much the same doctrine. Well, Harold Camping, but he was just one of really many who also found calculations. He did it well, just like William Miller, who gave his interpretation, which got the Seventh-day Adventists launched. Miller recanted. He said, "No, I was wrong." He went back to being just a good Baptist preacher, farmer person. Harold Camping also, when he realized that he was wrong, he admitted it, and now, but he's got a little bit more insight than we do now, because Harold Camping is in heaven. Okay, so this gives us, okay, the final call that comes, and that's chapter 21. Then we go over to our basic outline. We've got to be ready for Christ to come at any time. Okay. Very good. And I'll use this review periodically, only I won't take us through everything the next time around. I won't take us up to where we are each time. Any questions about this before I go on? And by the way, if anybody has recommendations of what they'd like to see, maybe it's possible to add in, and you don't want to do too much because you don't want to get too cluttered when you do a presentation. But if you say, oh, I wish maybe we could add this little thing in here, I'll give that some consideration to beef up the presentation. Any? Yes, take the microphone, give him the mic.
All the churches existed at the same time. And
right, the specific ones that are mentioned there,
yeah,
they all existed at that time.
Yeah,
in about 100 AD together,
but
as individual churches.
Each church's condition is represented in the different time frames, the different years.
Yes.
And was that a foresight from Jesus, or a revelation, or a warning, or did someone else make that comparison?
Well, okay. When you start to put two and two together, and this is a good opportunity to mention how reasoning on this kind of thing, how reasoning in general occurs. We're looking for patterns all the time. Everything we do, we're always looking for patterns. This is how we perceive and understand things. And so when we say we know something, typically we know it by generally and by noticing the patterns that are there. The patterns that are there intended by God to be found. The trouble is sometimes with that kind of reasoning, you might go a little too far, or maybe not far enough in your reasoning. You might overinterpret the things, or you might underinterpret. So there's a risk either which way. The underinterpreters became the preterists, let's say. They would accuse us of being over-interpreters, okay? But thinking things in the future. But generally speaking, we would expect to see patterns. So if you have the things which are, the things which thou hast seen, and things which are, it only makes sense when you divide it up in this way. The things which shall be hereafter are clearly chapter 4 on. Now, they could be referring to the things which are to the 7 churches. Maybe that could be the things which would be hereafter. However, you start noticing these very interesting perspectives that we have the advantage of in retrospect to see the seed of Satan, to understand what that is referring to have knowledge of the Babylonian mystery religions. Okay, get you in trouble if you get tongue-tied on that one. Okay. So now we're looking for those patterns. Are they justifiable? And you say, yeah, pretty much. Especially when you know that this is a revelation, that God is trying to reveal something. So you go into it expecting something to be revealed. So you go into it with the presupposition, this is representing something that's going to be revealed. So you start putting these 2 and 2 together, and you come up with these conclusions. Once you do that, once you get your general conclusion, now you start applying that you gotta feel safe in your conclusion that you just drew. Okay. When you feel safe enough to say, yeah, this only really makes sense if it's talking about, since it's all futuristic anyhow. I mean, like 95% of it's futuristic. So why not this then? Then you start saying, well, how would I apply this to the future? And you see no churches mentioned after the rapture. So therefore you say, well, before the rapture, this must represent churches. You see how this reasoning works? So it's an inductive logic where you're looking for the patterns with reasonable meaning, sufficient reason to say, yeah, this is probably what's going on. And now, as far as it being something that people put together later on, pretty much on account of when you're going through that time period of history, you don't realize that you're necessarily in it because you don't have the benefit of comparing the 5 ages to come. Okay. Now, when we look at Laodicea, we say, wow, we surely are in it. However, there are some that wonder if maybe we're still in the Philadelphian age. Okay. That's why, we don't have the benefit of all kinds of history behind us. That's why I say, well, when did this Philadelphian age end? Yeah, somebody said 1910 or 1904, whatever it was. Some said 1950s, 60s, maybe 70s, pushing it to the 80s. Yeah. So that's where we don't have the benefit of sufficient time behind us. Prophecy is always more easily understood in retrospect after it's been fulfilled. It was, oh yeah, okay. Now it's obvious to us now. Does that answer pretty much? Okay. And that's a good question. Yes, please.
Yes, that was just prior to 2012. What was it, 2011 when camping went off on that?
Okay, yeah.
And we had, I felt terrible. We had a guy, very nice fella, obviously a churchgoer, probably Seventh-day Adventist or one of them. He came in, this is when I was working nights, he came in with a stack of these pink flyers, and he was handing them out to everybody at the time clock, saying, you better get yourself right with God. The Lord is coming back, and here's the date and everything like that. And I felt terrible. I went up to him. I said, Jim, I said, the Bible says no man knoweth the hour. When he goes, I know what it says. He says, but Dr. Camping is very knowledgeable, and he has cracked the code of the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's important that we get the word. I said, but Jim, you're going to be very shocked when you come in after that date. And sure enough, man, he came in and he caught it from everybody, and I just felt terrible for him. Yeah. And he just kept shaking his head. Yep. Dr. Camping made a slight miscalculation.
And I think he adjusted it, and then it was later that he said, no, his adjustment was wrong too.
Yeah, eventually I think he just moonwalked away from the whole thing.
Yeah. Now, Alan and Desiree, I don't know, are you aware of Dr. Camping, Harold Camping, what we're talking about? Okay, yeah. It was pretty widespread. Okay. And we had a friend of the church from another church who left his county position, sold his business, put the money into advertising for the end, and we felt very bad for him. He's back in business again. Okay, praise God. I don't know about the county job, but he's back in business and working. Now, all that said, I don't want to sort of smirk over it or scoff at it too much, because I'm going to say that even though I knew that it was not the time, it still excited me, the thought that, what if it were? Okay. And that's a good thought. We should always be thinking, what if it were tomorrow? If somebody said, I got it all figured out. Well, we know they're wrong, but the idea certainly is exciting. You know, I sort of, when we went to do the book of the Revelation, I'm a little bit leery of, I mean, I'd like to do prophecy preaching and stuff like that, but I don't, it can't be said that I major on it on account of I see what people do with it and they take it and they run with it too far. So I do have some caution when I do go to do this. And so I did when we decided to do the Revelation study here. But nonetheless, there are those, even though they are saying, well, hey, the way things are going, it could be this year. Yeah, if you go back over the last 40, 50 years, there was still talk like that and people anticipating and wondering all along the way here. So even though we still know better, and we look at when we do look at the times, it is still kind of exciting thinking, well, it could be tomorrow, it could be next year. Okay, I've still got 18 sermons planned ahead of me right now. Okay, serious? No, I'm sorry, I'm down to 17 more. Yes, Ms. Wilma. Yeah, and Wilma's saying in World War II, they were saying could be today and tomorrow. And I think they had extremely good reason for actually saying that back then. Yeah. Okay. Well, very good. Let's go to our 4 trumpets for today. And like I said, this will be quick. The thing that we want to take notice of is really the devastation that's going to be taking place. That's probably the most characteristic thing. And I see that I did not do my page numbers on the screen for this. Okay, the first trumpet, this appears in your notebook as page number what? Somebody have it there? We're on question 183. Page 111. Okay. Okay, the first trumpet is on page 110. Okay. And I see that I don't have the page numbers for the next ones either, so we'll try to keep track of that. Page 110, the first trumpet. Okay, so Revelation 8:7, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. Okay, now again, like I said, there's not an awful lot of interpretations going to go on here. What you want to take notice of is how that a third of the trees are being burnt. Can you imagine what that would be like in the world today? We've had the benefit over the pandemic, where we're seeing shortages of all kinds of things that took place. Okay, what would happen if you got rid of a third of the earth? Okay, what kind of effect would that have on interstate commerce, right? Okay, and with the burnings, you're going to have the smoke that's going to be involved. That's going to be involved with the darkening of the sky. And so we're seeing hail and fire mingled with blood spread over the entire earth. And it's a third of the portion of the trees, but all of the green grass is going to be destroyed. Fire itself consumes a great deal of oxygen, but the removal of the third of the trees, along with all of the green grass, will have a devastating effect on the supply of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Remember that, does anybody know what plant food is? Carbon dioxide. Okay, plants eat carbon dioxide. You cut out a third of the trees. I mean, they were squawking about the effect on the Amazon rainforest with all the deforestation. And while we're seeing with the carbon dioxide balances things in the world. Okay, so the plants eat it, and then they breathe it in and consume it, and they give us back oxygen, and we have other things that are going on. So I wouldn't worry about CO2 levels. You know, they declared CO2 to be a pollutant. I can't remember how they phrase it. I thought, oh great, what are they going to do? Make us wear gas masks? Well, it wasn't gas masks, it was masks, but anyhow. They want to stop people from breathing. But no, the plants need that. Well, you cut that out, and what kind of effect is this going to have? Look at, I believe it is Sri Lanka. I think it is Sri Lanka. Decided to go with natural fertilizers and cut out, synthetic fertilizers, destroyed their whole economy. Yeah, and you couldn't keep up with enough organic fertilizers. Where do you get organic fertilizers from? The cows, which they want to try to get rid of because they think they're emitting too much carbon dioxide. Well, where are you? Don't mess with nature. Government always does this thing with unintended consequences. They have these solutions. Yeah, they have solutions which mess things up even more. Okay. Yeah. So we're talking the problems just from that, and locally being a problem. You take out a third of the trees and all of the grass. Think of the effect it's going to have on the world at that point. So 3.5 years into the tribulation, you're going to have, if you didn't have major problems from what was done before with the agenda of the Antichrist, it's going to be far more wiped out with that. So the thing to take note of is not so much what do these things mean. What you want to, with this for today, all these trumpets we're going to look at today, what you're looking at is what is the effect, the massive effect on the world that's going to take place. So question 183, 1/3 of the trees burnt will cover 17 million square miles, or 30% of the land area of the world. 30% of the land area is going to be affected. The second trumpet blasts now. Revelation 8, verses 8-9. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. Okay, so the phrase here is as it were, which seems to indicate this was not necessarily a literal mountain, but something that resembled a mountain. Could be a meteor, could be an asteroid. Okay. I don't think we actually have any asteroids that are actually threatening the Earth, but God could redirect an asteroid if he wanted to. It destroys a third part of the sea. Again, we're talking about this. I mean, you want to talk about climate change. Okay, so I think I'm going to reverse myself. I've said that the world is not going to end in climate change. Well, not in our lifetime, okay? It's going to end because there's going to be a massive climate change if you do away with a third part of the sea. And you have a third of the ships. Now, we can appreciate the issue of a third part of the ships being destroyed because we see a tiny, minuscule effect of what's going on with the airline industry. They had a program that was, a file that was put in, screwed up the whole system. We'll look at what the Department of Transportation and how they're not dealing with the trucking industry problem. Harold, if you have some comments on the trucking industry that comes to your head, raise your hand there. Harold says, please, it's a weekend. He throws his hands up, please, it's a weekend. Okay. But if you have any insights, let me know. But yeah, we see this effect going on. It's a minuscule effect compared to you knock out a third of the ships in the world. And we have an awful lot of international commerce because of shipping. Geopolitics is an interesting subject. The way the world is structured geographically greatly influences how well the politics of the world is shaped because of commerce. Okay, where America was like ideally situated with its rivers in a way that Europe and Russia and Asia were not. And it was because of opening of navigation, because of modern navigation methods a couple hundred years ago, that the politics worked its way the way it did. If you're a history buff and you like to see things, check out subjects on geopolitics. The only thing that comes to mind, if you were to Google after the end, I think that's what I Googled, and there's one geopolitical commentator. He's not talking conservative or liberal or anything. He's just talking geopolitics, and you can get some very interesting insights from that. My brother, I think, had put me onto that. Okay, so question 184. Something like a mountain will destroy 1/3 of the sea, 46 million square miles, leaving much blood from Dead Sea creatures. Let's see if anybody's got a text question for me. Nope, it's just Lowe's that has a nice deal for me. Okay. Sometimes I get a question sent in by text. Okay, so now that's going to bring us to the sixth, point number 6, the third trumpet. Revelation 8, verses 10 to 11. It says, "And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many died of the waters because they were made bitter." Okay, so the third trumpet brought about a poisoning of the fresh water sources. Before it was the sea, this is now the fresh water sources. Wiersbe says God has his stars numbered and named, according to Job 9. It's likely that this fallen star is molten, and that as it nears the earth, it begins to disintegrate and fall into the various bodies of water. If a star actually struck the earth, our globe would be destroyed, so this star must come apart as it enters the atmosphere. Of course, this is a divinely controlled judgment, therefore, we must not try to limit it by the known laws of science. In other words, it could be that it's going to be designed to disintegrate, or maybe God could just smack it and have it disintegrate. Wormwood was actually a bitter plant that grew in Palestine. According to Ryrie, many species of wormwood, a woody herb, grow in Palestine, and all have a strong, bitter, but not poisonous taste, which causes the plant to be used as a symbol of bitterness, sorrow, and calamity. Proverbs 5, verses 3 to 5, says, "For the lips of a strange woman drop as the honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell." There's an admonition there for us. Bitterness. Do not want to have bitterness in your life. It's interesting to know that on April 25th, 1986, the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the world took place in a town called, I'll say Pripyat, I don't know, in the Ukraine, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Many people were killed immediately, and many more died as a result of the radiation poisoning. 1,000 square mile area surrounding the plant has been evacuated permanently because of the radiation problems within it. And what's interesting to note, this is just an interesting little trivia thing here. The name Chernobyl roughly means wormwood. This does not mean that the falling star will necessarily radioactively poison the waters. It is still a very interesting association. So question 185, what will be the effect of the falling star? It will turn poison the waters with a bitterness that will make men sick. So we've got a third of the land area and all the grass, trumpet number 1, trumpet number 2. We've got a third of the seas, trumpet number 3, the fresh waters. So these trumpets are having the earth be stricken left and right, left and right. All of these are physical, astronomical things. Remember, trumpets 5, 6, and 7 are going to have woes that deal with spiritual beings being involved. Those will be the next time. Okay, so in Exodus 15, verses 23 to 25, we read, "And when they came to Marah," Marah means bitterness, kind of related to the word myrrh, related to the word Smyrna, related to the word for wormwood. They could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord. And the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. You're going to find Elisha is going to do the same thing, same kind of thing. Well, here now in the Revelation, it's the reverse of that, with the waters being turned to bitterness, and there's no respite from that. So let's look at point number 7, the fourth trumpet. The fourth trumpet. Verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And of course, this could be very easily associated with the burning up of the earth and the shadows on that. When you had Mount St. Helens, when it erupted and exploded, the fallout from that was felt all really across the world. And there was a darkening of the sun, and it did affect the weather patterns for a piece of time. It's said that if Yellowstone were to erupt and explode like that, if you had a seismic event, that it could be so bad. They're kind of expecting it someday, next 1,000 years. They don't know they don't have 1,000 years, but whatever. So, but it's been said that were to happen, that we would have like really such a devastating effect on the earth because of the darkening of the sky, for stuff being cast up into the atmosphere. So the heavens had also been affected during the opening of the sixth seal back in Revelation 6. This is another darkening. One of the things that the people that teach a pre-wrath return of Christ, they try to time things according to the darkening of the sun. There are several darkenings that take place in the Revelation. This is just yet another one. This reduction in light will also cause a reduction in temperature. Later in Revelation 16:8, during the fourth vial judgment, the sun will reverse and cause men to be scorched. So the reverse is going to happen. In Matthew 24:29, Jesus says specifically, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened and the moon shall not give her light. Stars shall fall from heaven and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Those stars could actually be a reference to angels, by the way, associated with the powers of the heavens. So that brings us to question 186. The sun, moon, and stars will be affected during the sixth seal judgment, the seventh seal, fourth trump judgment, and the seventh seal, seventh trumpet judgment, the fourth vial judgment. Okay, so those are the different various judgments there. And the point here is that there are a number of darkenings that take place. Brings us to our last point, the three woes and the last three judgments. Revelation 8:13 says, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe. It's not because he's just repeating himself for effect. It is specifically that there are three woes, one woe for each of the judgments to come. Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. So this other angel appears in the midst of the heaven, announcing the coming of the last three trumpets, which, as I said, are also called woes. They represent yet another escalation in the intensity of the judgments. So the intensity, and then again, I'm saying again, it's going to be involved with demonic and angelic activity. That's what makes it woe. That's what makes it woeful, and that's what makes it escalated. In the first woe, a fallen angel or a star looses demons and Apollyon. Apollyon means destruction, another name for the devil. In the second woe, 4 fallen angels that had been bound are loosed and marshal 200,000 demonic soldiers. The third woe contains the vile judgments of God's wrath. So what makes the last 3 judgments woeful is the way demons and angels are involved especially. So question 187, the last 3 trumpets each have a woe to accompany them and are characterized by demonic and angelic activity. Oh, was it 200 million soldiers? Okay, I will circle that and check back on that. Okay, thank you.
US military's got like 3 million soldiers. Russia, China alone can supply 200 million men.
Yeah. Well, these are demonic hordes. So
But I think,
yeah.
I think it's
I'll tell you what, if I found 2 demons, I'd be worried. 200,000, 200 million. Either way, the effect is, but we'll get that number. We'll make sure to look that up and get that fixed. Okay. Does somebody have, we have a microphone here. Anybody have a comment, a question? Anybody from home, you can speak up at this time too, if you'd like to. Okay, one of the strong themes behind the importance of the book of the Revelation, to me, is to say, please, you don't want to be here for this. Get saved. To me, like that's my ultimate thing with all of this is whatever is going to happen. You can quibble over certain details and trying to figure out what's an hour, what's a day, what's a year. You don't want to be here, whatever it is. You don't want to be here for this.
regardless of the details, don't want to.
Yeah.
Pastor.
Yes, sir.
I sometimes I get cloudy on the on Armageddon, and I'm trying to remember where I read about after a great battle,
Right.
the dead will it'll take the people 7 months to bury the dead enemy. I'm trying to remember, what is that, Armageddon?
No, that's not Armageddon. That's Gog and Magog. And I got to get the detail. I always have to get the details placed in the proper perspective. I think it's 7 years are going to be burning the weapons. I don't think it's 7 months.
Oh, 7 months to bury the dead.
Okay, and 7 years to burn everything. We're talking is the book of Ezekiel.
Oh, that's where I read it. Yes, I think.
Some details might.
That's Ezekiel 39.
Yeah.
Some details might.
My dad was mentioning it earlier. I remember that.
Okay, there's Ezekiel 39, and Joe, you're saying also,
There might be some details about that in Zechariah.
and some details about that in Zechariah. Yeah, we'll bring that in. That'll actually be a little bit separate thing because it's not contained there necessarily in the book of the Revelation.
So is that when Russia moves on Israel?
Yeah, this and in fact, one of the things that can be explained with that is that this could be part of kicking off the tribulation. Could be starting at the start of it all, but that is not supposed to be Armageddon itself. Armageddon is where Christ comes back and he's riding the white horse with the angels behind him, and we're accompanying him, and that will be Christ finishing off the battle of Armageddon.
Okay, yeah. One of the things that that I got from Ezekiel, if I have the different countries straight, I think the understanding is once Turkey becomes fast friends with Russia, look out, because
Yeah.
I think the both of them are the ones that move on Israel and precipitate that battle where so many of them are wiped out.
Yeah. You've got Meshach, which represents Moscow. You've got Togarmah, Gomer, which represents Germany. You've got a number of countries that are listed with that. So it's very, very detailed in there. And we're watching these alliances being formed, and sometimes you got to wonder about the exact details, but we're watching it happen. I was saying to Nancy, it's just so accelerated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're moving along, because we're the children of the 50s and 60s, and then you get to some of the developments we've had. It's just things seem to be happening faster and faster. So
Technology begets technology.
yeah, technology begets technology. Oh, yeah. Harold says, "I'm getting used to it." Yeah.